hear an objection.
All right.
Okay, so I will kick us off. Good evening, everybody. My name is Randy D'Antonio. I am one of PEF's statewide vice presidents. I'm also a licensed master social worker. I've worked for the state. This is my 25th year, primarily for the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. And I've also worked at OCFS. One of the issues that has been ongoing for all of us as social workers is the issue around pay equity. This is not a new issue. I've been a union leader for almost 20 years. And over the course of those 20 years, members in OMH, in OPWDD, in some of our correctional settings have always, and rightly so, raised the concern that they are licensed master's level professionals and their pay is not on par with some other titles we represent that have similar types of duties, responsibilities in education. One of the issues that we hope to talk with you about tonight is the process that it takes for a state employee in a variety, any title, but in this case, social workers, to be considered for an upgrade. And we're here tonight with NASW because part of opportunities we might have moving forward is on the areas of grassroots lobbying with our brothers and sisters in NASW, where pay equity has been on their radar for a long time. PEF has worked with NASW before. And I just want to mention, as state employees, we work within the New York State civil service system. So the process we follow internally is one way we can affect change. The process we follow externally involves coalition building, political action, and building grassroots organizing amongst the membership, which is all of you. I'm going to turn it over to Gina to introduce herself and then back to Sam to do their introductions.
Thanks, Randy. I can't compete with you. You're always so eloquent. So my name is Gina Corona and I work for OMH. I have been employed with the state since 2006. And I met Sam several years ago when it was brought to my attention while I suffered alone that other social workers were also suffering with enormous caseload sizes and the lack of parity with psychologists and recognition. And all of this came to a head when caseload sizes really exceeded what we could do was ethically responsible. So I reached out to NASW and there was a prior director there. We kind of lost touch, but I was assertive in my efforts and finally met Sam, who has been very receptive and wonderful. And we actually talked a lot about what social workers need to execute the work that they do, the type of clients we work with. And in starting this dialogue, I became much more involved in NASW, becoming an active member, becoming a member of their committees, and starting this bridge between NASW, social worker role, and the deficits that are being seen, and then trying to bring them to the labor management table. As I said, I work for OMH. I am the regional coordinator for Region 4, so I'm out of Syracuse and have continued the dialogue at the table. I think at this point, we're finding many social worker deficits in various areas where we used to be able to recruit and retain because we were much more competitive in the private sector and people wanted to come to the state. We're finding now that folks are not wanting to come over. It's just so much more competitive to be able to work from your home, not have to pay for mileage, not have to pay for bridges, and potentially not childcare. So if you took a $10,000 pay cut, you're actually making money because you're not paying for those other things. I think this is the time to have a great conversation about how we can work together, advocate for some of the things that Randy was talking about, reclassification or reallocation, the parity, and partnering with the pay study with NASW and how we can move this forward.
Thank you, Gina and Randy. I'm going to actually ask Amelia to introduce herself first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amelia Lochner-Malave. I'm a staff member with the New York State chapter of NASW, and I just look forward to supporting the work of PEF members and PEF social workers and hearing a little bit more about your needs tonight.
Thank you, Amelia. And I'm Sam Fletcher. I'm the Executive Director of the New York State chapter of NASW. I have been here for a little over 3 years. Gina was actually the first member I met in person at the chapter right before COVID started. And she's right. Like she was like, NASW is going to get involved with this. And I came into the chapter with the thought that our members should run what we do. One of the first things I said to the team at NASW is, why would someone be a member? And I was like, we have to answer that question in order to improve the chapter. And one of the biggest things is through our advocacy work that has to be led by members. I'm a social worker, but I'm not boots on the ground like you all are. And so we need the people who are boots on the ground, who know what the workforce issues are, and what the community issues are, leading what we do. And I think we've successfully been able to implement that. And some of the first issue that came to us was from Gina, and it was caseload caps. Back in 2019, I remember the conversation. She was at our office and she said, in 2010, our caseloads were between 40 and 45, and that was very doable. We could give, very high level care to all of our clients, no problem getting our work done. We're able to manage everything, attend to crises, all of this. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That sounds about right to me. And in 2019, she said, now we're at 90. So it's like, okay, that's a problem. You've doubled, you've over doubled in 9 years. That's problematic. And then of course, Gina and I have talked several times, quite often over the last 3 years. And during COVID, she's like, we're at 130. 130, that is unbelievable. There's no way you can give good care at 130. You just can't, it's impossible. And I learned from the first meeting this afternoon with the PEF members, I didn't even know all the paperwork you had to do. So I learned about that today. So I know it's not possible to give good care at 130. And I hear now you're between 110 and 120. That's entirely too many people on your caseload. That is hugely problematic. I can see why people would want to leave with caseloads like that. And then of course, another issue that we've heard across the state in all sectors of social work is about pay and other workforce issues, such as like not only do you have high caseloads, it's the type of cases you have, it's the stress you have, what's going into every day going to work. So it's all of these things. So we've done a couple of different things I just want to tell you about, like some of our advocacy work. Our members usually choose some different bills for us to back and different like social justice and workforce issues for us to concentrate on. And then there's certain things that we do through the chapter just because we hear it too much. We're like, okay, this is a problem. One of those things has to do with licensing. When I came in, we were getting so many complaints every day about New York State Ed and the Office of Professions and people having problems getting their license, getting information from New York State Ed, being able to re-register their license, all of this. So a year ago, we partnered with some of our members and some board members and did a lot of research on this and wrote a pretty extensive report asking for specific changes with licensing in New York State to make it easier for social workers. Because it's pretty, there's a lot into licensing. It's written in 4 places, 2 laws, 2 regulations, and it's all over the place. So we started with that, and then we've kind of progressed. We have what we call a capital action day every year. It's always around Valentine's Day. So always that, second week in February. Last year at our capital action day, we had over a dozen legislators come and we were presenting the issues our members had chosen. Like, these are the bills we're working on. Now, we've been developing relationships with the legislators over the last 3 years, so they know who we are. And Senator Prasad, who is the chair of the Social Services Committee, she came into our meeting and she started the meeting with, I think social workers aren't paid enough, and I think we need to do something to relieve your student loan debt. So that wasn't on our agenda, but we're like, we'll put it on our agenda. What do you need, Senator Prasad, to make this happen? What do you need from us? And she said, I need to know where we're at right now in the state with salaries. That's a good place to start. So we created a salary survey. We sent it out. We had about 1,300 people reply to it across New York State. We hired I'm a qualitative researcher. We hired a quantitative researcher to analyze that data and write that up for us. And we're still working on that report that should go to the Senate this fall. And part of what we're adding in that report is I work with social workers from other countries. One of the reasons I do that is because they do social work differently, and it gives us ideas and it gives us ways to think about social work and what we can do. And one group of social workers I work with is in New Zealand. New Zealand was very successful in the last 5 years at getting an across the board pay raise for their social workers. So they determined that social workers are not paid enough money, and they were talking about it being tied to gender, just like what, oh, actually, Randy, I don't know if this is the conversation we had before you came on or if you said it when you came on, but Randy and I were just talking about this, about the gender wage gap, and over 70% of social workers identify as female. And they found this in New Zealand. So what they did is they did a research study with social workers all across the country, and they developed a skill set. These are the skills that social workers possess in their everyday duties. They took that skill set and they compared it to male-dominated fields in New Zealand. And we were most closely aligned with, I love this, I think it's fascinating, police detectives. There was another department in the police station, I can't ever remember what it was, and air traffic controllers, which is so interesting. These male-dominated fields that we're in, we're doing detective work, we're doing crisis management, all of this. So New Zealand took this data, they presented it, and they got a 30% pay increase across the board for social work. So the reason I'm telling you this is that we've been looking at this for a long time, and like, what are other countries doing? How are they getting social workers more? So we're working on the report right now. And when I talked to Randy and Gina, you know, we've been talking over the last few years. I'm like, how can we support you? Because I think right now the time is ripe for PEF to move and to get some of these things implemented, because there's a mental health crisis in the state and a worker shortage.
Yeah, Sam, I want to just piggyback along with what you're saying. So for folks on the call, there have been a number of things that have happened over the last few years that have led to where we are today, which is a crossroads. And the timing is very different and very right for us making a plan to try to advance on the pay equity issue. Back in 2018, the New York State legislators passed a bill that basically directed the Civil Service Department to review titles in state and local governments that were female dominated, minority dominated, and basically to report out on wage disparities. The report just came out about 6 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago. And what it identified was 183 titles within state government that were considered, quote, devalued for those reasons, either minority dominated, female dominated, and vastly underpaid when compared to other titles that might not be female or minority dominated. The report came out and directed civil service to do a number of things. They directed them to undertake a study to look at these titles and make recommendations and reevaluate their salary grade and classification. Now, for those of us who have been around a long time, many of these salary grades were developed 30 years ago. They have not been looked at since. We know that a lot of our credentials, our qualifications, our license requirements, all of those things either are similar or surpass some of the titles we work with, and we don't disparage them. They do great work, but we're not being paid what we should be. And this pay equity study gives us what Sam is referring to, which is data. And data is critical when we're going to go to legislators, when we're going to go to the commissioners of agencies. For us in state government, the process we have to reallocate or upgrade our salaries, there's multi-levels to that and many options. For us, there's either reallocation, which is comparing us to another title that does similar or like work but make more money. In our case, I think from what I heard from most people, and I would agree, the most common comparison is the Psychology 2 title. They're in OMH, in OPWDD, in some doc settings, and they seem most similar as far as duties and functions. The way to go about dealing with the civil service issue is making sure we're pressuring them at the labor management table. But pressure can come in all forms. And it's really important to recognize that with this pay equity study, with us experiencing recruitment and retention problems, frankly, for the first time in many, many, many years in my career, we had never seen problems getting social workers to come into state government or to stay. COVID really changed that. And I think for a number of reasons, Gina mentioned some of them, the telehealth opportunities, the work-life balance issues, the risk to your health for some people, the ability to retire and positions not being filled, so doing more with less, unsafe working conditions, and the reality of the pension tiers, which are not, doesn't make New York State as competitive as they once were. So we're looking at all of these issues as a union, as union leaders, and we know that NASW, with 62,000 members across New York State, is also looking at these issues. So we're trying to tie our situation and what we're trying to fight for, and what President Spence is asking myself and Gina and other leaders who are social workers to work with you on, is building a grassroots organizing effort around this. And I think, there's many, civil service is a dense system. I'm happy to answer any questions about it, but I think it's really important for people to understand that we want to advance this, but we're going to need to work together as far as moving it forward. We do have a meeting scheduled, and I hope NASW, I'm kind of flinging this on you now, is available. We were able to set up a meeting between our legislative and political staff at PEF and the two legislators that oversee, they chair both the social services and the mental health committees. We're also going to try to loop in some of the other committees. Now, you need to know, we have approximately 1,100 licensed social workers in PEF titles, in PEF agencies, state agencies. Out of that 1,100 or so, about 900 are working out of OMH. The other few hundred are spattered about through OPWDD, OCFS, some docs facilities and other agencies, but the bulk are in OMH. So I just want to lay that out for people so you have sort of a basic framework of where we are, why we think the timing is right. We know that some people were frustrated because they saw other healthcare titles get geographic pay or get increased hiring rates. Those were things that the agencies put forward, frankly, for nurses, after 10 years of us advocating in a global pandemic. And that's what took them moving on it. So we need to convince management this is something they should be doing and they should be supporting. And that's where we're going to work towards building a proposal and all of those things.
And you all will be sending out a survey to all your members, right?
Mom.
Yeah.
I want to go for my.
And so one of the things that we talked about in our earlier meeting is just asking you, what are some of the issues you're seeing, like in your position? What are some of the frustrations you have? Because that helps us to be like, hey, you have to fill out this survey, you got to put that in there. And so, just if you want to unmute and just speak, that would be great. If you feel more comfortable putting a question into the chat, you can do that as well. But we would love to hear from you.
Do folks have questions or comments? I mean, I can keep talking about things that, members can do on their end, like getting involved in their political action committees in their regions. You have access to your legislators. This is an important thing to be doing to advocate for yourselves and also to get to know the other leaders in your area. But it's important that we hear from you. If you're not comfortable talking publicly, you can use the chat, or you can reach out to Gina, myself. I know Sam and Amelia would make themselves available as well, and you can answer that way. We can also send you the recording from the earlier session, because I think there was a lot more people on and the discussion was a little bit more robust.
I'd like to ask if, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that there are a lot of members on the PEF social work website on Facebook. And I know that people have been asking repeatedly, what can they do? How can they help? So it may be good to post that there, very specific things, because they really are hungry to do something. I hear it every day, even when I walk the halls at my facility. People stop me and say, so what's going on? And I direct them to the Facebook site, but some of them are relying on information from the people who are on the site. So if we could put it there, I think we would really get a lot out of it.
I think that's a great idea, Elaine. I have held off on posting next steps because I think sometimes we get ahead of ourselves. But with the survey coming out and making sure that we're telling our coworkers to respond, please put your feedback in there and get it back. We are going to need folks to pull together, a work group. And if people are interested, they can reach out to me directly and say, I want to be on it. I've already had people be interested. And Elaine, I hope you will also be on
Oh yeah,
that
you know
work
I'm going to be on
I
it.
just-
Elaine, you don't have a choice. I've already tapped, your name has been identified. You're in.
Absolutely. But this is a long haul process and we're going to need people. So absolutely. And I apologize for going in stages, but we want to be clear when we deliver our message of the things that we really need to take care of and do and put our check marks next to. And having the conversation, we just opened up this conversation at statewide. Not that we haven't had it as an ongoing issue, but we've never brought it to a head before where they've actually begged us for information or NASW for referrals because they've exhausted their list. I mean, it's incredible that we can't find social workers that want to work for the state of New York, making the highest pay out there.
Did you see today's list? It came out today, facility openings. The list of social work openings was humongous.
Can you send that to me? Because
Absolutely.
I haven't seen it. Thank you so much.
It is just, it's incredible, Gina, when you see it today.
Wow.
This is the first time. It just goes on and on and on. How many?
And you and I are old enough to remember that you had to watch the obituaries. I'm going to say that is bad, but you know what I'm saying? Like people did not leave these jobs. They stayed forever. These were coveted positions that they might leave to go to a school district, but nobody left.
So I'm looking at the chat and I'm also trying to manage time because I know people worked all day. I know that a lot of people were very frustrated that some members of their facilities or their teams got upgrades and some members like social workers and other titles did not. Let me kind of step back a little. Gina was referencing LM. LM is labor management for those who are not actively involved. Labor management is the process internally that we have as union members and leaders to address issues in the workplace. Labor management is where we talk about recruitment and retention problems, staffing issues, shortages, and we pressure management to do the right thing. In the cases of the upgrades particularly for nurses, those things were, unfortunately had been issues for almost a decade where there were critical shortages with leading to excessive mandations. Now, there were other titles that were included that the agency put forward, and, apparently they had shortages in some areas in. The union we support our members getting paid better and good wages and all of that. And when we have opportunities to support additional titles to do that, we're going to fight for that. But at the end of the day, management controls what titles they put forward for those upgrades. And so we need to go back to them and let them know that you forgot a few. And that's where we're at right now. But I think it's important to recognize it is frustrating, and it definitely feels, it creates divisiveness between team members, and that's understandable. But I just want to let people understand the framework for that is the union is not legally allowed to put forward requests by civil service rules. It's the agency. So when the agency excludes certain titles, it's our job to call them on.
Here we are.
Where can we get information besides Facebook? So a couple of things. Please make sure you have updated cell phone, email information with PEF. We will be sending out a survey, as mentioned by Gina and by Sam. That survey is for us to start collecting stories. We need specifics. What's changed? How many people could take other jobs and are considering it? What is different about opportunities that are out there? Now, historically, we've never been able to make the case that we were paid less than the private sector. That maybe we're closer now to making that case, but we haven't been in the past. So we really need to think about, a strategy, and reallocation is probably the one that makes the most sense from where I sit, but we can have that conversation. Where we are right now is we need members to work with us to put together a more robust and comprehensive proposal. We had wonderful, wonderful members up in Western New York in OPW that started this process. So we have a foundation to work from. I see Stephanie McLean-Bethley on the phone, who was the council leader and is a social worker, and we're blessed to have at PEF right now. And it was her division that actually pushed for this going well back into 2019, 2020, and probably prior. But we do need members who are interested in working with us. So if you are, I put my email and Gina's email. We'd like to get representation from as many facilities as possible. Now, we don't need 50 people on a small work group. We need a work group that's able to take a document, hone in on the issues that we need to add. We'd like it to be representative if possible. So please let us know. The survey is going to ask for some information around demographics, potentially cultural issues. And I want people to know this because people get sensitive about that. But the reason we're doing it is to tie it into some of the pay equity demographic issues. It's not because we want to get into your personal business or, family dynamics. It's because it's going to help us make a case. And that's really the ultimate goal, is to make a case that's data driven with objective information, as well as stories and real life personal life events. I can't work for the state anymore because, I'm not able to have any work-life balance. I don't get paid as much. I can go here and it's closer to home and I get paid more and I feel safer. I mean, we need to know all of those things. There are criteria that is up on the website. If you want to take a look at it on the PEF website, www.pef.org, under members, if you go to civil service, there is a frequently asked question link. and you can go on there and you can look at that information to understand the types of things we would need to know to build a strong proposal.
In listening between this afternoon and tonight, it's become clear to me you're back here. So you're doing the survey, and anything that you all use from the survey will be de-identified. So if you add people's stories, you'll make it where people won't know who they are. So that's when we write reports, that's what we do. But when we meet, I hope I can come to the meeting with the legislators. But if I'm not there, if I'm not able to come, you need to ask them, who do you suggest we talk to get these changes implemented? Because they're some of the best people to teach you your strategy, right? Like, and one of the things all these PEF members are going to do is, once you're ready to kind of roll, that you're preparing your action, you're handing over the survey, you're like putting this in front of, I don't know how PEF works, so you'll fill in the blanks here. If it's putting it in front of management or whatever, is you may end up having all the people on this call and all the other PEF members. You may do a blitz to their representatives. So over a 2-day period, they're just getting call after call after call, because we're in a workforce shortage. And I saw the list you all put in the chat. The state's in a workforce shortage, and they have to fill those positions, and there's no one on the list to fill the positions. So this is your time to push. And the legislators need to hear, because the legislators go to the department, they'll go to the commissioners, they'll
Exactly.
go to OMH, OPWD. Why do I have my constituents calling me and saying that they have poor working conditions and they're not being paid equitably, right? So the legislators are the ones that go to these state agencies and start to put pressure on them. So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. And,
Yeah.
and at the very least, our legislators, and we, I have to say, PEF, I chair the statewide political action process for the union, and PEF has fostered very good relationships, working relationships with many of our legislators. We don't get every single thing we want, but we always have open conversation, dialogue. We have the ability to reach out and put our members in front of them so that they're heard, give them information so they can advocate for us, and at the least write the commissioners, call the governor's office, talk to civil service. We have a good friend who chairs the Civil Service Committee in Senator Bob Jackson. He was a former director of field services for PEF, so he understands very well the issues around civil service being a very difficult and antiquated system to navigate, and what needs to be done to update it to make our public sector employee workforce more robust and fair for people, especially for professionals in the middle of a mental health crisis. We're in a different world right now than we were 3 years ago. We actually have acknowledgement by elected officials that we're critical as part of infrastructure in schools, in hospitals, in facilities. They need social workers. We also have a shortage because people have been treated badly and paid badly. So, we have opportunity, in my opinion. It's a matter of some grassroots organizing. So PEF is very well equipped at doing letter writing campaigns, and we know how to set those up, but we also want to partner with, NASW, because they're talking the same language in many instances as we are. And there is strength in numbers. That is my experience with anything. If we have 5 members show up, or if we have 500, the message is different. So I see someone's raising their hand, Sam.
Go ahead,
Can I-
Krista.
Hi.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Hi, so my name is Krista Lloyd. I am a social worker too with OMH at a facility. I'm working for CNYPC at a satellite unit at a prison,
Welcome. Which prison?
Greenhaven.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm in the Hudson Valley.
Yep.
Okay. I go to the labor management meetings. Obviously, I'm in a docs facility, so I don't speak to upper management from OMH per se. I'm only speaking to administration from the docs facility I work in. They have absolutely no interest or concern or ability to do a damn thing about any of this. And they'll just say that. So I have compiled from my computer at work the entire CNYPC, because we have a directory on our computer, an intranet directory. Every single email, which is an OMH email, which is work, not personal. And I wanted to, because other social workers have been talking about this, like send out an email blast. We're not supposed to do it through work. So, you know, I think part of the problem we're having when you're talking about numbers and everybody wants to accomplish the same thing is that nobody has the ability to run a list of personal names and numbers or emails or text numbers or whatever to kind of corral everybody in together.
So
And if
Chris,
we did that, I
a
think
couple of
everybody would.
things.
Yeah.
Please encourage people to make sure they're updating their contact information with the union, because we can, and it's a lot safer for us to send things out to all of you to your personal emails than for you guys to be communicating on the state system. I will say this to everyone. If you're communicating on the state system, just assume they can see your email. And they may not be looking, but they might, depending on what, you know, what you're doing and if it's on their radar. So it's really important, because you're right. We're divided. There's 24 psychiatric facilities. There's 13 DDSOs. There's umpteen number of docs facilities. We're fragmented and divided. The only way for us to come together as sort of a unit is if there's a repository, and the union, it's much safer for us to manage that data. PEF protects IT information of its members. So we're not going to, like, you know, it's not going to go out without it being blind copied and, you know, encrypted and all that stuff that our IT people know how to do. So I think that's one thing. Now, I will say, I looked at the numbers of where people are. Central New York, Marcy, and that whole unit there, they have the most concentrated numbers of social workers because of how many, you know, units you have. You have not only OMH, you have docs, you have the Stark program. You know, there's lots of folks. I think it was over 200 of the 1,100 were classified as Central New York Psych. Now, they're satellites, obviously, but that's a big chunk. We want to make sure that we have someone on our work group or a few people that are representing you guys. So I think that's one thing to try to organize.
Yeah.
We're going to have, you know, a central outreach. Now, we sent this out to everyone we had an email address for, a personal email address that was in an LMSW1 or LMSW2 title. So I can check how many people that is, but I'm going to say it's probably upwards of 75, 80%. But I'm guessing, I don't know. I'm going to double check and find out. But I think that's probably one of the only ways that we can safely, without getting people into potential trouble for using the state system. And, you know, and to answer your question, I don't know if you have a unit chief there. You're OMH, correct? But you're in a facility, so you're dealing with the superintendent, not the unit chief.
Yeah, I won't bring anything to the superintendent that's related to OMH, you know, salary, grades, none of that. The LM meetings at the facility are strictly about safety concerns, logistical things that go on in the facility. You know, we do ask how many vacancies there are, what's, you know, that type of thing. But as far as going to them with this discrepancy in pay, I mean, the interesting thing is that even the psychologists twos that I work with are in agreement that even on paper, the education requirement, the licensure, and the work experience are the same, if not more extensive for the social workers. And the other, so they're like on board with it and think there should be pay parity, you know, themselves. And all you had to do was go to the criteria and look that there's a 3-grade difference on the civil service, but yet the criteria for education and experience is virtually identical.
It's
Not
less.
for the
It's
not
less.
for the not for the LMSW1, but the LMSW2. And then the other problem with the social workers, just to be, everybody probably knows this, you then also have LMSW2s who then become clinically licensed and then are able to do private practice. And then the schema for pay has no differential for that. So there's all the clinical, which I am one, all the clinical people can go out and work private practice, and that's where you lose everyone. So they really should have another grade, like they have a salary grade for the LMSW1, a salary grade for the LMSW2, and I almost feel like a good way to petition civil service or who the powers that be would be to say, once the C is obtained, you need another grade.
Can I speak to a couple of things? Sorry, Randy. I just wanted to mention, I'm an LCSWR, so I understand where you're coming from. It's a lot of work to get your R number. It's a lot of time and a lot of investment. And, you know, it's the holy grail for us, right? Then we're at the end. So I agree, we need to do something, but we're going to tackle it from all avenues. Right now, though, you go to labor management meetings, but you're speaking to them in a docs labor management meeting.
Right.
You don't have OMH representation. Well, I'm here to tell you that we are working on that. And we are actually in negotiations currently to have CBOs, which you are a part of,
Right.
to have labor management. So that is coming and it's very exciting. This is like hot off the press kind of stuff, but we've been working on it. And actually, I think you're in Region 9. I think I think your regional coordinator is Diane, and she's the one that spearheaded this because she saw the need for this to happen. So we are working diligently on that at the LM table with the docs folks to put this in motion. And I'm hoping it won't be too much longer. We're pretty much at the end of the road. And that's something to keep an eye out because the idea is it would be at every facility. And I'm not sure
I want to add to what Gina's saying. Because there's the bulk of licensed social workers are out of OMH, like 890 of them. If OMH is agreeable to it, historically and typically what has happened in the past is the agency with the highest number takes the lead and the other agencies have to agree because it comes out of their budget, but they know if they don't agree, they're going to lose the few people they have left. So generally, once the biggest, pot falls, then the rest will agree to doing it. Otherwise, they jump ship. So that's traditionally how it worked. So if we can get OMH, I know that OPW has put this on a labor management table discussion as well, and we have to talk to the other agency LM chairs. But these discussions have to start. I see you, Elaine. I just want to, Albert had put something in there, and I think it's a really important point. A lot of not-for-profit groups have family programs and advocates that are built in. Unfortunately, in many cases, the people we serve come from really marginal situations. They might not have, we don't have built-in family advocacy programs like we used to. But if we have members who can connect us to families, and we're doing this on the OPW side because we've had so many closures where we're doing testimonials and videos. If we have family members willing to talk, we will work with them to do video testimonials, work with them to come to hearings with us. We're all in on that. But it's again, it goes back to members have to be careful because of HIPAA and making sure you're not, reaching out to people you wouldn't normally have contact with. So there's ways to do it but we just have to talk it through.
Elaine, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I wanted to mention about the the Psych 2, I really want to clarify this. I said it earlier, but I want to say it again for the people who are on now. The Psych 2, which is a grade 23, requires no licensing whatsoever. All you have to do is get a master's in psychology. It doesn't even require an internship. It just requires a master's in psychology. And that person with the master's in psychology can be supervised by an LCSW, a grade 20 for 2 years, and become a grade 23 with no license. They are not reimbursable. To get reimbursed, they would have to have an LCSWR sign off. So it is not equal. If anything, the LCSW is far greater than the Psych 2 that's a grade 23. So I don't want to say that we're equal. We are not equal. Our requirements are far higher than theirs are, and we're getting paid much less. And it's really insulting, you know, and it's happening on our inpatient, it's happening on our outpatient, where psychologists that are grade 25 and just got that boost are doing the exact same job. They're called PSCs. The write-up for them are exactly the same, and yet they get paid half of what the psychologists get paid, which is, again, really insulting. And so people are leaving like crazy, because why would they stay? A lot of other outside agencies in New York City are paying the same for psychologists and social workers. So why stay here and get so devalued? And not only devalued, but also we're in a dangerous setting. We don't really get heard. And with the paperwork burden, I keep hearing from everybody, is quadruple what it is everywhere else. So there's multiple factors, but I just wanted to be clear that the Psych 2 is not the same. And we have intensive case managers also that are bachelors that are grade 22. And they only require bachelors and no license whatsoever. And they're a grade 22. So we have LCSWs that are really seasoned, doing great clinical work, leaving to become care coordinators that only require a bachelor's degree because they get paid more. And then we lose more slots and more slots for this because of the pay. So we lose really good workers on a regular basis. And it's so
Elaine,
frustrating.
those are exactly the kinds of situations we want to capture in our survey. So there's going to be narrative opportunities. I wanted to say two things. So the grade 23 psychologist is the master's level. The 25 is the license level. The master's level did not get the increased hiring rates. The license levels did. When we look at the title series and reallocations, there needs to be a title that we select where we can show evidence that it's a similar position based on certain characteristics that are measurable, such as duties, minimum qualifications, responsibilities, education, that kind of stuff. So, you know, we have to be able to compare it. And I can send out, it's actually on the website. I would encourage people to look at, so you understand the difference between fighting for a reallocation and what has to be proven versus fighting for, let's say, a salary differential, which is not permanent. Salary differentials can be changed, they can be revoked. Those are your geographic pays, your increased hiring rates. Permanent changes are reallocations or reclassifications. Reclassification is actually changing your title, which I don't think is the intent here. I think reallocation, which is changing your grade, your salary, but maintaining a title. Now, we might want to look at the LCSW as a separate title, but those are baskets within the larger grouping. So I think
Also for the social worker 1, we start at an 18. Every other master's level professional starts at a 19. Rehab, the brand new licensed mental health counselor,
Yeah.
they start at a 19. We start at an 18. That is so insulting. They just came out of nowhere with this title. They have a lower educational burden than us, and yet they start at a 19. How?
Yep.
if I knew the answer to that question, I'd be in great shape. You know, the reality is these salary grade classification and compensation, which is part of the Department of Civil Service, looks at things and they look at a variety of factors and they come up with these salary grades. And a lot of them need to be pushed back on. And so, well, wait a minute. And that's why we're doing this. Other questions? So next steps. We are planning an internal, a smaller group, hopefully with NASW and our legislative folks. October 13th, we're meeting with the senators I had mentioned earlier. We are putting an ask out to this group and interested members to email us if they're willing to work on fleshing out a proposal and a white paper. Elaine, I have to tell you, you've given us a lot of really, really great data that I think needs to be incorporated into that report. But again, we can't do it without you. You know, this is to be a grassroots effort. Gina is working on the LM side of things to make sure that this stays at the table in discussion with OMH. Our OPW leaders are on board. So again, I will be perfectly candid. These things take a while to do. We have to get our ducks in a row. We have to be persistent. The budget legislative session, you know, starts coming up in the winter, and we need to be ready and prepared to be calling legislators. So I encourage people, get on the website, look up under membership, the civil service information, look at, you know, the political action information. And if you're interested, get involved with your regional PACs. They know your local legislators. And on our end, at the higher levels, we'll be talking to the chairs of these committees to try to move things along that way. Oh, Elaine, so there's people on, Elaine is saying, that are multiple. Did you share your link somehow?
I shared my link to get people to come on,
Okay,
yes.
so I saw you on a bunch of different times,
Yes.
and I was like, is she on like 5 cell phones?
Yeah, so some of the people commenting aren't me, but they are commenting. They are
Okay.
getting involved, just so you know.
Okay, no problem. I did say social work supervisors included. So I had mentioned at the beginning, we're looking at the way civil service breaks it down is there are title series. And so there's social worker ones, LMSW ones, LMSW twos. There's also collateral series, which are the social work assistant titles and the social work supervisor titles. Often what happens is you pick the title with the largest grouping because it's the easiest one to get momentum on most of the time. And in our case, it's the easiest one to prove and make a case for. But typically what happens is and we'll advocate for the other collateral titles to be looked at as part of an evaluation or a reevaluation. And Sam, I love your idea about the chairs holding a hearing or a roundtable. I think that's something we should be one of our asks, in addition to having them write a letter to the governor, to the commissioners of the agencies that hire social workers, and to the Civil Service Commission. So I think those should be some of the asks we make.
Well, and I think you also have to say to them, you know, you have to lay your case out just like you did tonight. Here's the work we're doing. These titles were created 30 years ago. Here are the new titles coming in that we are more qualified for. We're doing more work in, we have a higher education, all of this. So it's time to make this equitable. What do we need to do? What would you suggest our next steps be? Like, because they're so great. A lot of times they'll be like, okay, you need to contact every person on my committee. Like, you all need to just start blasting every person on my committee. You know, sometimes they're like, get this, this, and this. Once you have that, let us know. You know, like, they're really good at providing that feedback because the case is so strong. This case is so strong that, I mean, you're going to have to make them tell you, no, we really just aren't going to treat social workers fairly. Like, that's what you're going to force them to tell you, right? And they won't do that. Because they want, I muted myself with my hands there. They're all about getting the workforce built. They're in trouble. New York State is in trouble. You saw that list of jobs in the chat. Like, there's no one on the list and no one to fill these jobs. So they've got to, it's all about recruitment and retainment. Because, and they need to hear, you're going to lose the people who are already here if things don't change. Like, they need to hear that this is, the house is on fire. You all need to be putting it out right now.
Krista, I saw your hand moving.
Yeah, just one more thing about what you mentioned earlier about going directly to OMH. Are you gonna have info? I mean, I'm a PEF member at my facility. I'm a PEF rep. If I can be the person to contact HR at Marcy with, you know, everybody's name from CNYPC, like a petition or something of existing employee. I don't know how you want to do it, but I'll do whatever on my end to petition OMH, I mean, CNYPC, which is part of OMH, and, you know, but I need the information, who you want me to contact and that type of thing, and maybe everybody's name and personal, because like I said, I have all the CNYPC emails. That's their work email, everybody who works for CNYPC.
So your council leader, I think, is Josie Slifka at OMH. She's a nurse practitioner, I believe, or I think she's a nurse practitioner. So Josie and Mike Garrity is your field rep. So you can absolutely ask them to put this on the labor management agenda at your local facility. And Gina is also dealing with it at the statewide level, but asking questions about vacancies, asking questions about their willingness to support a proposal and advocate with OMH central office that they need social workers, that they can hire, that they support salary increases. That's the first step, is getting our management, local and statewide, on board with that. So, you know,
Josie.
I'll put it in the chat. It's easier. I'll send it right to you, Krista.
Josie is the council leader, but I believe that her field rep would be either Nancy Wolf or.
I talked to Nancy.
Okay.
She'll be at our meeting tomorrow.
Right. Nancy is very aware of the circumstances, because Nancy's coming to our statewide labor management meetings. And I think that steps we take, we want to have a uniform voice, but I'm in touch with Josie Slifka almost daily lately. So I will let her know as well that we're, you know, I believe she already knows this because I sent her the, you know, the information, but you know, as far as working together, we want to get through the survey, and then we want to be able to have our work group so we know what steps we're going to take and start, you know, tackling each of those things. Please, we have to strongly encourage you not to use the emails for OMH.
I never do.
I know, but again, only because we have a longstanding agreement that we are not allowed to do that. But Randy and I have the ability to reach out. If you let people know, to make sure that we have their most accurate contact information, their cell phone numbers, we can text them when we have an event that we need people to do. We can text and hustle them. It's called a hustle, or we can do the PEF on the move, depending on what the organization will allow us, or we can do or have access to.
We also can set up action network letters that basically you just put your name and your address in, and they, by your zip code, they identify your legislators. And so they go right to your local elected official. So, you know, that can be part of a wider strategic plan around this. It's one piece of a plan. So, you know, there's not one thing that makes this happen. I see Elaine put in there that she thought OMH is supporting this change for social workers. So I'm going to leave that one to Gina, because I'm not at the OMH labor management table.
I have to get back in. I just got alerted that my son passed his yellow belt test. I wasn't there to see him. So sorry for the announcement derailing here. So Elaine, there are people, I'm using my link. My understanding is OMH is supporting this change for social workers. So we were at the labor management table and OMH admitted that they are having a hard time recruiting and retaining. They didn't exactly buy into salary increase, but they did buy into all of the things we talked about. Some areas it's salary, some areas it's, the travel and the ability to work from home, telecommuting. In some areas, it may be other incentives. What they did say is they would be willing to have a conversation. They have a problem. They have a deficit. We are the largest number of providers for mental illness across the state. And so we started that dialogue with them, I think, in a very real context. We have their minutes. We know that they are struggling to recruit and retain, and they know that we know that. So we've had the conversation and we have a next step in our action items to have a follow-up conversation about the social workers.
And I'll just end it with this, but it's always really important when we go to the table to advocate that we have information, objective data. So please, 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 if you're not someone who likes to do surveys, make an exception. If you have coworkers that you know are impacted by this but aren't getting emails, they don't want to give out their email, please encourage them to do it. The more data we have, the more robust the discussion and argument we can make. And we want to be able to fight this fight in a really comprehensive way. And it's critical. That's one way members can participate, is by telling us what's happening. Because I'm not in your facility at the ground floor. I'm not in the field doing the work you're doing. So I only know, based on my history of doing that work, but also what I'm hearing from folks. It's after 7. I'm happy to stay on for a minute, take any additional questions, but I know a lot of us have, had a long day already. So I think, next steps, Gina and I are meeting. We're going to put together the survey questions. I thank Sam and Amelia for their help and recommendations and what types of questions were helpful for them. And you should be getting it in the email sometime in the next week and a half, I would say, probably. Earliest next week, latest the week after. And then we will be having a meeting with legislators to sort of see where they're at with this stuff and then regroup with you guys.
I think that sounds great. And I just appreciate everyone coming tonight. And we look forward to keep working with you. We will always back social workers getting more pay and better working conditions. That is, the bare minimum. So thank you all.
Thank you.
you
We
all.
appreciate our NASW
Thank you,
friends.
everybody.